The deep corners of the Asian internet hold hidden footage and disturbing stories that were never meant for public eyes. From live streams that went horribly wrong to mysterious disappearances and unexplained horrors. This content will haunt you, so let's begin. The abandoned house discovery. On April 2nd, 2021 in South Korea, a YouTube live streamer known as BJ was exploring an abandoned house in the Exon region when his viewers were expecting the usual jump scares and staged reactions, but nothing could have prepared them for what came next. The streamer walked deeper inside the structure when his camera suddenly captured a dark shape in one of the rooms. With shadows everywhere and broken furniture scattered throughout, neither the audience nor the streamer immediately panicked. Instead, he decided to approach the shape to entertain his viewers, completely unaware that he was walking into a nightmare. The moment the camera got closer, his face went pale. The shape wasn't debris and it wasn't furniture, but human skeletal remains lying there silent and still. The viewers thought it was a well-crafted horror set piece, just another prop or fake skeleton for the stream. But the streamer knew the truth as he stood there staring at real human remains with no idea if this was a homeless person who had died alone or a secret murder scene he was never meant to discover. Not knowing what to do, he panicked and immediately ran out of the abandoned house with his heart racing. Later, the case went to the Exon police, who confirmed that the remains belonged to a real human being. The real challenge was identifying who this person had been, and for some strange reason, no confirmed identity or cause of death was ever announced publicly. Safari World Bangkok tragedy. A quick step out at the famous open zoo Safari World Bangkok turned what should have been a refreshing wildlife adventure into something that traumatized tourists for life as they sat safely inside their cars. Jian Rang Karimi, the supervisor of the place and a 30-year veteran of working with lions and tigers, accompanied the tourists on the morning of September 11th, 2025. While they were exploring the predator zone, they saw a bunch of lions sitting peacefully in the sun about 10 meters away. Suddenly, Jian stepped out from his jeep to pick something up, which caught the attention of one of the lions. After watching Jian's movement for a couple of moments, the lion made its way toward him so casually that no one sensed any danger and no one was prepared for what came next. The moment the lion came close enough, it lunged at him violently and dragged him to the ground. Things immediately grew worse as the other lions also rushed in to join the attack. The horrified tourists inside their cars started honking and shouting to scare them away, but it was too late because the lions had already begun tearing into Jian's flesh. Fellow staff members rushed to the scene immediately and even fired shots into the air, but the beasts didn't move easily. When Jian was eventually pulled away from the lions, he had already suffered severe injuries to his neck, abdomen, and right leg. With that extent of damage, he didn't stand much of a chance and died on his way to the hospital. Investigators found that Jian had broken a strict zoo rule that stated no one was allowed to step out of their car since the lions roamed freely without barriers. Crowdfunded to be doomed. A man walked into a building on November 8th, 2017, and went past the 40th floor without being noticed, and he was only getting started. After the elevator ride ended, he climbed even higher, scaling roughly 20 more floors from the outside of the building. His goal was to reach the top of the 62-story building called Huangyuan Hua Center in Changsha. From the ground, it was too high to notice him, but online more than 1 million followers were watching him live. The man was Wu Yongning, the first Chinese rooftopper and a former martial arts trainee who climbed skyscrapers using only his training, grip strength, and precise movements. There was one signature move that set him apart. He never used any safety gear whatsoever. That day at the edge of the building, he wiped the ledge clean for a better grip and slipped over the side with his legs hanging in the open air while his hands locked onto the concrete edge. It looked absolutely terrifying, but Wu had done this several times before without incident. Only this time, something went horribly wrong. His arms suddenly trembled and his body strained as he tried lifting himself higher multiple times but failed each attempt. Eventually, after clinging on for just a few more seconds, his strength gave out, and millions of viewers watched in absolute horror as Wu Yongning fell from the 62-story building. For weeks afterward, nobody had any idea what had happened to him. Finally, on December 8th, his girlfriend confirmed the tragic news. Wu had fallen approximately 45 feet onto a terrace below, and a window cleaner working there later discovered his body. But this story revealed another tragic truth about Wu. He was never doing this for thrills or fame, and the reason was much more personal. He had turned to rooftopping after injuries ended his competitive career in martial arts, leaving him completely jobless. With the money that came from rooftopping stunts, Wu was paying for his mother's medical treatment, preparing for his wedding, and trying to secure his family's future. This time, he had taken on a $15,000 crowd-funded roof-topping challenge that was being promoted by the Haya app. Sadly, in an attempt to secure a stable future for his family, he lost the chance of having one at all. Vietnam motorbike crash. A 22-year-old man in Vietnam left his home before midnight on the night of February 25, 2023. But something happened that ensured he would never make it back home alive. Instead of riding in silence like most people would, he began live streaming on Facebook as he sped down the empty road. The speed climbed dangerously from 100 to 130 kilometers per hour, yet he kept accelerating even faster. Shortly after 12:05 a.m., as he approached a roadside ditch, his attention shifted to his live stream for just a moment. The motorbike suddenly wobbled so hard that he lost complete control. The bike quickly veered toward the side of the road before hitting the ditch, and the impact was so catastrophic that it threw him onto the road, ending the live stream instantly. When local authorities arrived at the scene, they found him dead. The footage stored on his phone clearly showed that at the moment of impact, he had been traveling at 141 kilometers per hour, all while recording himself for social media. Bowdoin Square dance murder. Every evening around 7 o'clock, music filled China's Bowdoin Square as residents gathered to dance together. But on June 30th, 2024, things took a strange and violent turn. Among the dancers was a 54-year-old man named Xiao Mao Mo, a local internet celebrity who was widely known as Bag Brother because he had become famous for clutching a bag while square dancing in his videos. That night, while Xiao Mao was dancing as usual, another 53-year-old guy named Xiao Mao stood at the edge of the square. He was drunk and intently watching everyone when he suddenly made eye contact with Zhao across the crowd. That brief moment sealed Xiao's fate in the most tragic way. Xiao quickly walked towards Zhao with a knife in his hand, and in front of dozens of bystanders, he attacked him ferociously without any warning whatsoever. The music stopped at once as people froze and stepped back in shock. What makes this so disturbing is that despite Xiao falling to the ground covered in blood, Xiao did not stop his assault. He continued stabbing him again and again until he died, as if he was driven by some long-held revenge or hatred. As chaos erupted around them, a bystander quickly alerted the authorities. Xiao, likely impaired by intoxication, did not attempt to flee the scene, and police arrived within minutes to arrest him on the spot. After interrogation, the police revealed that Xiao had no previous connection with Xiao at all, and in fact, the two men had never met before that day. Instead, officers claimed that alcohol alone had fueled the aggression that led to the killing. Indonesia, karaoke murder. Herina Simanjuntak from North Sumatra was singing a religious song on Facebook Live when her husband suddenly appeared from behind with sinister intentions. Instead of joining in the singing, Agazurban Tamban picked up a kitchen knife, and before anyone watching could react, he began stabbing Heralina in a brutal attack. Family members screamed in shock as one relative tried to pull her away while another attempted to stop Algas from continuing, but Heralina had already collapsed on the floor, bleeding heavily from her wounds. The brutal incident happened on November 2nd, 2024, after which Algas fled the area immediately. The other relatives rushed Heralina to the hospital, but the injuries were so critical that she couldn't survive for long. The police launched a manhunt for Algos, and within 24 hours of the attack, they located him hiding at another relative's house in Pawn Village. However, while he was being questioned, the interrogation revealed a tragic truth about the arranged couple. They had only been married for 1 year after both getting divorced from their previous marriages, but Algos believed that Heralina was still in touch with her ex-husband behind his back. This belief made him jealous and caused him to harbor resentment for a long time, and as those feelings piled up inside him, they eventually exploded into violence that night. Consequently, Algos was charged with murder, which carried a possible prison sentence of 7 to 15 years. Philippines vegetable store shooting. A 23-year-old woman named Paloma Jovanos was live streaming from a vegetable store in the Philippines, completely unaware that someone nearby had been watching her for a long time. Around 7:30 p.m. on January 16, 2026, a man wearing a face mask and a ball cap walked toward her. While she was right in the middle of her broadcast, the man suddenly pulled out a gun and fired at her at close range. Paloma slumped over instantly as the bullet hit the back of her neck. The witnesses around immediately rushed toward her to help, but the panic gave the man an opportunity to escape the scene on a motorcycle that was waiting nearby. However, the attacker couldn't stay on the run for long, and the next day, police officers arrested the 31-year-old suspect who was identified as Freddy. Investigators identified the man as the live-in partner of the store owner where Paloma worked. Just days earlier, their relationship had ended after Paloma told the owner that he was seeing other women. After the breakup, the former couple divided their assets, which eventually made Paloma the manager of the store. Therefore, driven by anger over the breakup and the loss of property, the man decided to kill Paloma in revenge. After being rushed to the hospital, Paloma luckily survived the attack, but the suspect couldn't avoid the charges of attempted murder. India political assassination. A former corporator walked into an office in IC Colony, India, and sat down beside a local social worker, expecting a truce after years of political rivalry. A Facebook live stream had already started to record that meeting, but what the stream captured was the last thing anyone expected. After a long-standing political rivalry between politician Abhishek Ghosalkar and the local social worker Maurice Norinya, word spread that they had patched up their differences. On February 8, 2024, they declared they would celebrate this reconciliation publicly on Facebook Live. The viewers believed they were about to witness a political treaty unfold in real time, but the moment the cameras went off after the public speeches, gunshots rang out. The video captured the sudden burst of violence when Maurice fired 3 bullets point-blank at Abhishek Ghosalkar. The victim was so severely injured that he couldn't even make it to the hospital and succumbed to his injuries almost immediately. Police believed that Maurice probably never intended to reconcile with Abhishek at all, but had used the so-called treaty meeting as a setup for revenge. He had carefully created the image of a truce by putting up banners praising Abhishek publicly and hosting the meeting inside his own office where he controlled everything. This made sense because Ghosalkar had earlier implicated Maurice in a cheating case, leading to a 90-day jail term. That day, Maurice's plan wasn't to kill Ghosalkar alone, and to avoid the consequences, he turned the firearm on himself and took his own life right there in the office. Moscow School Massacre. An 18-year-old named Andrei Mlanikov in Moscow walked into his school carrying a bag like any other day, but that afternoon, there was a chilling surprise hidden inside. On November 1st, 2017, during a break between classes, Andrei entered their health and safety teacher Sergei Danilov's classroom while the teacher was alone. The moment the teacher's guard was down, Andrei attacked him brutally with a hunting knife. There were no loud screams heard in the corridor, and no one realized what was happening behind those closed doors. Within minutes, the 44-year-old teacher lay in a pool of his own blood. Surprisingly, instead of fleeing the scene immediately, Andrei took out his phone and posted several photographs of Danilov's body on Vakant, the Russian version of Facebook. By that time, Sergei had already passed away from the blood loss, yet Andrei kept clicking photos and selfies, casually posing beside the body. But the real horror is that taking photos was never part of his original plan, and the next moment, Andrei pulled a buzzsaw from his bag and took his own life right there in the classroom. At first, police suspected that Andrei had been influenced by the Blue Whale Challenge, a notorious online game linked to youngsters harming themselves across Russia. But recently, they revealed a more unsettling reason behind the incident. For several weeks before November 2017, Andrei had seemed withdrawn and tired of school, often skipping lessons. Classmates described Andrei as an introverted boy who always greeted everyone politely. Yet after being bullied several times by his peers, he began carrying a knife to protect himself. The teachers were completely unaware of this. Instead, because of his truancy issues, Sergei Danilov had warned him that he could face expulsion. In fact, tensions between them had been building since September when Sergei became his class teacher. Some classmates said he had publicly criticized Andrei over his truancy, which made him increasingly resentful, and that internalized hatred is what officers think eventually led to this tragic act. Seoul Itaewon Stampede. On October 29, 2022, thousands of people poured into Itaewon in Seoul for Halloween night. Celebrating the first unrestricted festival since COVID, 19 restrictions had been lifted. However, as the night moved forward, a steep, narrow alleyway near the Hamilton Hotel became so dangerously packed that it led to an unforeseen disaster. The crowd started moving in different directions all at once, with some trying to go downhill while others were attempting to leave the area entirely. Suddenly, a few people stumbled on the slope and fell into those in front of them, and as a result, within seconds, others toppled over their bodies like dominoes, and even breathing became impossible. Only loud screams echoed through the district as bystanders tried to pull victims free by their arms while others performed CPR on the pavement. The incident was so massive that 1,700 emergency responders, including firefighters and police officers, were dispatched at once. Ambulances lined the streets of Itaewon as unconscious victims were carried out on stretchers, and the situation only turned worse when thousands of people were reported missing. In fact, all the families were asked to visit temporary mortuaries that were set up for body identification. Investigators later concluded the tragedy was caused by extreme overcrowding and failed crowd control in the narrow sloping alley. What they suppressed was that despite earlier warnings, only 137 officers were assigned for over 100,000 people at the festival with no barriers or crowd control plan in place. As a result, by the time enough police and emergency services arrived at the scene, the stampede had claimed at least 153 lives, most of them teenagers and people in their 20s who went there to celebrate their first and sadly last night of freedom. Bangkok mall shooting. A teenage boy walked into one of the busiest shopping malls in Bangkok, the Paragon, and quickly headed to the ground floor restroom, but his intention was anything but relieving himself. The ordinary noise of the shopping center was suddenly shattered by sharp cracks in the afternoon of October 3rd, 2023. At first, some shoppers thought the sounds were coming from a construction site, but when more erupted, people began running in panic. Some employees pulled customers inside and locked doors while others hid in bathrooms or crouched behind counters. That seemingly innocent boy was actually carrying a blank pistol that had been modified to fire live ammunition, and using that, he fired over 40 rounds of bullets in the mall, hitting multiple people at random. As a result, Xiao Jinan, a 34-year-old tourist from China, was fatally wounded, and Moi Mint, a 31-year-old employee from Myanmar who worked at a toy store, was also killed while 5 others were severely injured. Even when help arrived, the incident had caused so much chaos that ambulances struggled through Bangkok's heavy traffic to get the victims to the hospital. However, police quickly located the suspect, and since the boy had run low on ammunition, he eventually surrendered to the officers. During interrogation, something even more unsettling came to light. The boy was identified as Fed Trudasanaman, and he said it was the strange voices in his head that made him do it, and he felt like someone was about to attack him, which ended in a mental breakdown. Further investigation revealed he had been under treatment for mental illness for a long time but had recently stopped taking his medication, and the result led to a massacre. The boy eerily summed it up, saying he wanted to kill people. Consequently, the boy was charged with premeditated murder, attempted murder, illegal possession of a firearm, and several other felonies. China anger mismanagement. Among the evening crowd on Renmin Road in China, a guy in his mid-20s was walking casually when the city police received a distress call from the same area. The caller frantically said that a man kept moving through the crowd, carrying a knife and stabbing people one after another. It didn't look like he was attacking anyone deliberately, but instead, whoever was unfortunate enough to catch his eye was the next target. In an instant, the evening of June 5th, 2021 turned into a nightmare. Panic erupted as people ran for their lives while several victims collapsed onto the pavement drenched in blood. The moment police rushed toward Renmin Road, the suspect fled toward a nearby bus station. After a 5-minute search with the help of bystanders, he was finally apprehended and taken into custody for killing 6 people that evening. The investigation identified him as 25-year-old Wu Wang from Haining County, an unemployed man with a troubled past marked by a dysfunctional family and mental illness. He had dropped out of primary school after his parents' divorce and frequently ran away from home. Even worse, in July 2015, he was imprisoned for 14 months in Wuhan for intentional injury after a runaway incident. After being released in September 2016, he planned for another attack. In custody, Wu confessed that he had acted out of pessimism and a desire to vent anger at society. Further investigation uncovered some chilling posts he had written online, where he admitted to practicing stabbing with a sharpened toothbrush and wrote that strangling was too exhausting. More disturbingly, he wrote that he would rather become infamous than fade away into an ordinary old age. In the end, the erratic man was sentenced to death, which was carried out on February 15, 2022.